Hi students, welcome to the course of Issues in Media Communication. So today we are discussing about the another topic in our course lecture 9. It's about public relations. We know that public relation industry is one of the most fastest growing industries in the world, particularly in the United States. Public relation companies are incredibly influential in shaping public policy and developing information about products and services. Here, in this lecture, we will discuss how public relation is used as a war propaganda tool, say for example in the Gulf War, or to silencing debate against big multinational corporate companies. So these are the key ideas of this lecture. First, we will define what is public relations. Then we go through the origins of public relations. And after that, there is a video screening which is available in the course material. So do watch that video. And lastly, we will go through the problems with studying public relations. So here are the recap of the last lecture. In lecture 8, we looked at the advertising and the way in which it can create issues for media communications. There we discussed about commercial messages get placed into new areas of our life, and we discussed the concern, the product placement, and how apparently normal things within media text like drinking Coca-Cola can be a part of an advertising campaign. I don't want to discuss more about today, so we go to our lecture now. Before we going through the different points of this lecture, we have to note that it is important to note that this topic is not meant to suggest that public relation is always negative and that somehow we need to be protected from it. We know that the very essence of public relation is to build up good relationship between the organization and the public. And mostly the public relation practitioners achieve this through a sincere, true, ethical way. The basic aim of all PR activities is to build a good image and reputation which should last. And this is only possible through a very sincere, ethical and true approach. But in the contemporary public relation industry, we can see lots of unethical, what I say, negative practices to achieve this. They are, what I say, maybe sometimes very short-term goals. So in this lecture, we focus on such kind of negative practices prevailing in the PR industry. So before go deep into such kind of issues, we have to know how the public relation industry work, or what are the roles and responsibilities of public relation. It is a fact that PR people have very different ideas about what the purpose of the media is than to journalists. As I told you, the primary aim of public relation is to build up a good image, good rapport, and good reputation for the organization. So their main goal or interest is concerned to protect the image of that organization. Whereas the journalism or the journalist's aim are a bit different. Their primary aim is to informing the public about what is happening in the society in an accurate and objective way. This means that sometimes these two sets of ideas are opposed to each other, and this can create issues for media professionals. Before we get into the debate in more detail, we need to define exactly what we mean by the term public relations. There are mainly four related definitions with regards to the concept and practice of public relations. So we can discuss one by one. The first one is public relation is concerned with a specialized knowledge about the public. What does it mean? It says that public relation industry is a professional one and which follows certain codes of ethics and behavior. So the PR practitioner should have that, should know about that kind of code of ethics, and they have to follow such kind of ethical practices to achieve the public relation goals. We know that in public relations there are two kinds of public, internal and external, and we have normally, we adopt different strategies to achieve the goals of public relations, particularly relating to these two kinds of publics. Second definition is public relation is concerned with mutual understanding between an organization and its publics. This means that PR is about making connection between the two sets of group. At one side, the organizations, it can be organizations or it can be companies or any non-governmental voluntary organizations, or even sometimes people, individuals like celebrities. And at the other end, the public, both internal as well as external public. So through effective public relations, we build up a good relationship between these two groups, and the PR practitioner acts as a bridge between these two groups to build up a good reputation. And the third one is PR is a two-way communication between public and the client. This means that PR is about trying to get people and organizations to understand each other better. So the main primary aim of public relation, as I told you, is to build up good relationship, and it is not through one-way communication. The PR practitioner should understand, should listen to what the other side, means the client side or the public side, what they have to say, or we have to understand the pulse of the public and respond or advise the client accordingly. And the last one is public relation is public persuasion through mass media. This means that PR is connected to some of the ideas we looked at when we discussed propaganda, but PR is more subtle and more ethical than propaganda. Though both propaganda and public relation, the aim is to persuade the public, the approaches are different. In propaganda, we may adopt sometimes unethical practices like lies or wrong information, or maybe through distorting the facts to win the mind of the public, or to change or alter the mind of the public. Whereas in public relations, we won't use such kind of things. The public relation strategies should be ethically correct, not through any kind of cheating, because our aim is to build up a long-term relationship. So who practices PR? There are two type of way of practicing public relations. One is specialist consultancy firms like Zena Public Relations in Oman or in the Middle East, which is very popular in the Middle East, or like international public relation consultancies like Hill and Knowlton. So when you work for such kind of consultancies, you can work for many companies at a time. The second way you can practice as in public relations as in-house personnel with large corporate companies as employees in the public relation department of such companies. Here, when you work as a PR practitioner as an employee in such companies, you can work only for that company alone, as you are an employee, full-time employee of that organization. So such organizations like Bank Muscat, Oman Air, PDO, all these companies have their own public relation department, and if you are recruited, hired as an employee, PR employee, you have to work exclusively for such organizations only. Now we're going to discuss the origins of public relations. Here in this section, It gives you some background information that will place the video we are about to see in context. So, with regards to the background information, we focus on the US public relations because that is where the public relation industry began. So here we categorize the origin of public relations in three categories: corporate, second one the government and foreign policy, and third one professional organizations. So in the corporate section, we discuss the early developments of public relations and the strategies adopted by the public relation practitioners during that time. And we will study one particular case here. Here we discuss one of the America's big business magnate, John D. Rockefeller Jr., and the issues he faced in the late 19th century or in the early period of the 20th century, and how that issue destroyed the image of John D. Rockefeller, and how through effective public relations Mr. E.V. Lee regained that lost image through effective public relations. Rockefeller Jr. was one of a very big business magnate in United States. He owned the Colorado mine where workers had gone on strike in Colorado mine. Rockefeller actually basically he was a very arrogant man, an entrepreneur or an employer who was very cruel to his employees. And he treated his employees very cruelly by paying low wages and forcing them to work hard even overtime without providing the basic facilities, without any health considerations. So what happened that these employees, the workers, the poor workers, they went on strike, and Rockefeller's private guards faced them with severe tortures. The private guards of Rockefeller threatened the employees, men, women, and children, to go back to work. And when they refused, these private guards caught fire the houses of these employees. 40 miners were burned to death when their tents were lit on fire by the Rockefeller Company guards, and this incident was happened on April 20, 1914, and this incident is known as Ludlow Massacre. As a result of this, several protests outside Rockefeller's mansion, his bungalows, happened. Media took up this issue, and the image of Rockefeller has gone down tremendously. So, seeking a solution to this, to regain the lost image of Rockefeller, he hired a publicist, a journalist, E.V. Lee, for this purpose. We know that E.V. Lee is considered as the father of public relations. He was basically a journalist, later turned to public relations. So now we can discuss what were the strategies adopted by Lee to regain the lost image of Rockefeller Jr. Lee organized lots of press articles emphasizing Rockefeller's human side and generosity. He advised Rockefeller to visit Colorado mine and meet these miners and their families. They were poor people, and asked Rockefeller to spend time with these miners, take pictures, attend their family gatherings, etc. And Lee, what he did, he created a series of news stories on these kind of interactions of Rockefeller with these poor miners. For example, he danced with the wife of these miners, or how he pampering the children of these miners, etc. And he also advised Rockefeller to construct, hospitals or such kind of facilities, to provide such kind of facilities to improve the health conditions of this mining society, the poor miners. All that activities, Lee wrote lots of news stories and distributed to the news organizations. Particularly that time the newspapers only were there. So lots of stories about the generosity or the human side of Rockefeller were published through these media outlets. And through that, Rockefeller regained a positive image as a philanthropist, a person with a generosity and a human mind. So when that strategy, Lee's strategy, clicked, other organizations also followed the same path. So after this, the other organizations followed this same kind of strategies. So after that, the large corporations, when for apparent openness, spun news issues to their own advantage, created news articles that promote their the organization's positive side. And the organizations, the corporations started to give money to charity to improve their image, as what we see in the corporate social responsibility nowadays. So the CSR actually started just after that Ludlow massacre, or Ivy Lee is in a way started the initial or the first CSR activities in a way. The second point is that how the government is used public relations as a tool to build up or win support for their activities, and how it is important in foreign policies of government. As we have seen previously, in the United States of America, during World War I in 1917, the US President Woodrow Wilson was concerned at anti-war sentiments developed in United States. So to convince the American citizens about the need of involving in that First World War, Woodrow Wilson set up a new government agency, Commission for Public Information, to make the war popular. They adopted four strategies. They employed four methods to convince the American people and to win their support. They issued loads of press releases to the newspapers and wrote thousands of magazine pieces, stories that promote American interest and picturizing or depicting the other side in a negative way, like the German atrocities. And they also circulated loads of posters demonizing the German atrocities. And also they created or they funded for such kind of movies, films that promote American interest and brand their enemies, the Germans, as the enemy side or the wrong side. He also organized around 75,000 speakers nationwide to promote the war by talking to church groups and civic organizations. As we know that during that period, the church, Christian church, was very influential in the society, and there were lots of civic organizations, non-governmental public organizations, which worked among the society, was so influential. One of such an emotional move was the testimony by a 15-year-old Kuwait girl. Her name was Naira, and she was taken to the American Congress as a witness to explain what she saw at the Kuwait hospital. On October 10, 1990, she addressed the American Congress members and she described what she had seen with her own eyes in a hospital in Kuwait City. Her written testimony was passed out in a media kit prepared by the Citizen for a Free Kuwait, that organization created by the Hill and Knowlton, in which she explained her experience, what she had seen there at the Kuwait hospital. She said, I volunteered at the Al Abdan hospital. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns and go into the rooms where babies were in incubators. They took the babies out of the incubators, took the incubators and left the babies on the cold floor too. Next month, in November 1990, at a United Nations Security Council public forum, similar testimonies were given by the same girl. This helped to persuade the American Congress and the United Nations Security Council to attack and bomb and then invade Kuwait and Iraq. And these stories were carried out, got huge media coverage across the United States, not only United States, across the world media. And George Bush Sr., the then US President at that time, mentioned this fact in at least 6 speeches. So that much coverage got for this kind of Naira's testimony. So all these actions were very subtle and no one knew that this was created by Hill and Knowlton. And later only it was revealed that this organization, Citizens for a Free Kuwait, created by the Hill and Knowlton, was backed by the Kuwait royal family, and this girl, Naira, was actually the daughter of the then Kuwait ambassador in United States. Now we move to the third aspects with regards to origin of public relation. It is professional organizations. As we know that the public relation, the discipline of public relations itself is originated in the early period of 20th century. By 1926, means at the beginning, at that early part of that 20th century, there were only 10 public relation firms operating in the United States. And some professional status was required for that PR industry. So to gain that professional status, therefore, they developed certain principles. So a PR practitioner hence required certain skills and qualities. They must develop specialized knowledge about the public, and they must provide honest representation to the public. Third quality principle required, they must use, the public relation practitioner must use two-way communication between the public and client. Fourth point, principle required, a public relation practitioner must be a counselor to client and not just a conduit, means a message channel for the client. He has to counsel, he has to advise the client what is good, what is right, and what is desirable. And also he has to demonstrate commitment to the public interest. What is good for the public, for that as well he has to demonstrate certain commitment. Then another principle, a PR practitioner must belong to the professional organization of public relations and follow training requirements and accreditation or code of ethics. So in a way, these are certain qualities and skills required to be a public relation officer. But until 1948, there were no such organizations to monitor or control the activities of the public relation as a profession. It was in 1948 the first organization for public relation practitioners started. The Public Relations Society of America, established in the year 1948. That means since 1926 until 1948, during that 22 years period, the public relation industry was unregulated. And with regards to the professionalism, the idea that the two-way idea of communication is very important to public relations, because public relation is supposed to be an independent broker between client and the public. Means the PR practitioner has to consider the interest of both the client or the organization as well as the public interest. So when the public relation practitioner has to consider the interest of both sides, some issue arises. Suppose, for example, what happens if the public opinion conflict with the client's agenda? Public interest is one which is against. If that public interest is against the client's interest, then whose side the public relation practitioners should stand with? That is an issue arise. And another situation, what happens if disclosure in the public interest conflicts with the client's agenda? For example, liquor companies or tobacco companies, because that are tobacco companies, as we know that smoking is injurious to health. So such kind of tobacco companies, they are what I say, the company, the products are unhealthy from the point of view of the public interest. So when a public relation practitioner work on behalf of such tobacco companies, whose interest should a PR practitioner protect? Such kind of issues will arise. So in practice, but we see that in these cases, of course, the client's agenda prevails as they pay the bills, because mostly whether you work as a consultant, you will be paid by the client or the organization, or if you are an employee of that organization, work in an in-house organization as an employee, then also just being an employee, you will be paid by the client, so you will have to protect the interest of the client, not the interest of the public. Therefore, PR agencies are largely employed to shape public opinion on behalf of their employers or the clients. Now we will watch the video Toxic Slide is Good for You. It is available on YouTube, and you can watch it from there. It covers much of the material we have just talked about, but gives you a lot more background information. So this video Toxic Sludge is Good for You illustrate how much of what we think of as independent, unbiased news and information has its origins in the boardrooms of the public relation companies. It reveals and exposes the truth that many of the news articles appeared in the newspapers are planned and developed by the PR firms and to promote their clients' demand. So it's not always easy to connect the issues of media communications to public relations, because when we study the issues with regards to public relations, as we know that PR is not always a negative thing itself. Its aim, the PR aim, as we know that it is to build up good rapport, good relationship between the public and the organizations, and it has to be achieved through a very ethical and sincere approach. And we have studied certain principles required to be a PR practitioner as well. But there are occasions when the different priorities of PR people and journalists clash. That also we discussed in the early part of this lecture. It is important to look at the reality of what has happened rather than simply assume that certain things have taken place simply because one side or the other says that they have. And we also need to remember that PR issues need to be thought through because PR is about persuading people or helping a client to convince people of the rightness of the views. So that's all about this lecture. So here in this lecture we discussed the definition of public relations, the four definitions we have defined, and the origins of public relations, in which we discussed three aspects with regards to origins of public relations. We discussed the emergence or the origin of public relations as a corporate entity. Then we discussed about how the governments used public relation as a tool to gain support and how public relation influenced the foreign policy. Then we discussed the development of professional organizations over this period. After that, a video screening on the the use of public relations or the how public relations manipulating the news stories. In that video, toxic sludge is good for you. And after that, we studied the different problems with studying public relations. So in this lecture, the most important point from the exam point of view, you have to study the four definitions of public relations and the three aspects with related to the origins of public relations, especially the corporate section and how Lee's strategy, helped John D. Rockefeller to regain his lost image. And the second aspect, the government and foreign policy and the role of public relations during the Gulf War period. These are the important areas in this lecture.